But before we can appreciate this, I would like to put it into a context. At the hospital in Thompson for years, there was a lady, and she was a senior citizen, that was the receptionist. Her name was Jean. And if you ever had the experience of Jean, you always knew she was dressed beautifully. It was very important to her. Now, Jean has an interesting background, and she's still alive. She's now 93, but she is retired from the hospital. She is from England, actually Ireland, and for many, many years, her husband and she lived in Irondequoit, and they would invite any British government people who would be coming to Rochester because of Kodak to stay in their house. And over the years, they had many diplomats, many officials of the British Parliament staying in their house. And because they were such wonderful hosts, one day they got a letter from the Queen of England inviting them to get a royal proclamation for what they had done over the years in taking care of officials and diplomats as they came to Rochester. This meant that they had to go to London and go on a given day and receive this proclamation from the Queen. Now, Jean is a beautiful seamstress, so she went about making her husband's suit that he would wear to be presented with this proclamation. And she even made his hat. And according to the manual she received on how you dress to go and be presented something from the Queen, it took a great deal of work. But she not only made his suit and his hat, but because she was going there, she also made her own outfit. To hear her describe the experience, it was the top of the list of life experiences for her. To be in that chamber, and then how you were to present yourself to the Queen, and to be there and feel all of the history of the castle and all of that. She said it was just a wonderful experience. Let's see, it was Tuesday of last week. I went to Rochester with my wife's nephew. He came to visit, and he told Esther, my daughter, that he was going to go to a formal type of occasion, and he needed a suit. Now, he's 22 years old, and in the modern world, it seems, boys don't need suits. But he felt that he needed a suit to go. And he is a big man. And so we went to Rochester, to the big tall man's store, which is quite a store. When you go into this store, all of the models are great big men. And you have an interesting experience looking at these kids. They all look like NFL football. But what was interesting, they were very courteous, wonderful people. And they got him a suit, and he put it on, and they had a shirt that they wanted him to put on, and put on a tie. And he went and looked in the mirror. And he just stood there like he was hypnotized. In a way, he was seeing a very different image of himself. And it was because of that suit and then that tie. We all are familiar with Paul Harvey, and as one of the great commentators. I know that about the 8th year of life, he was offered an opportunity to be a paper boy. And so he started on this movement. And after delivering to this one house for a week, he had to get his pay for the paper. And so he knocked on the door, and the man came and had the money all ready for the paper. And then he said to Paul, "How would you like a tip?" And Paul said, "Sure." And he said, "Make sure you never go out with wild women." Now, he didn't have that concept of a statement. He was thinking of a coin, but he didn't know what the statement meant. So he went home and asked his father. And his father said, "Well, the only thing I can say to help you understand who wild women are is they're the opposite of your mother." The second experience that he had on his paper route, in which he had to check out meaning with his father, there was this elderly woman. And every time he went to give her the paper, she had a bottle of cold Coke for him. And so he would stay there and drink the Coke. But while he was drinking it, she started to tell him about her husband who had passed, and what a nice man he was, some of the experiences and so forth. The next day, she had another Coke for him. But she talked again about her husband, who was named Roger. The next day, another Coke, but she talked about her husband, Roger. So Paul went to his father and told him about what's happening here. And Paul said, "She just seems to want me to listen." And the father said, "That is what you are to do. She has a need to tell someone about her husband who is deceased. And if she's found it by giving you a Coke, you will stay and she can talk to you." Well, Paul says, "What should I say to her?" Father said, "Just say nothing. I guarantee you, once you finish the Coke, she will let you get on the way." This went on for 2 years. But the father said, as Paul would continue what was happening there, said, there will be a day that she will stop talking about him. 2 years later, he remembers the day perfectly when he went, and for the first time, she asked him about himself. He went back to the father and said, "What happened?" He said, "It's very simple. You were a psychiatrist and you don't even know it. You helped her put to sleep Roger in himself." He went into high school, and one time he had a friend, and he attended this church, and they were having a supper, and their friend said, "Let's go over to that church for supper." And to his surprise, the lady that gave him Coke was standing in a line helping people receive their food. And he saw that she was very, very happy. She seemed to be, in a sense, pleased to see him. Went back to the father and said, "Dad, what's happened here?" Roger's asleep. He isn't forgotten, but she has gotten on with life. And that's what we have to do in life. When we have tragedies, we have to adjust to it, and then we have to put that to sleep and get on with life. The final thing we must think about before I share this parable is, it's a new year. But there's one word that defines life for me. It's the word gift. And we should never forget it, because life is a gift. I've counseled hundreds of people through the years that have come to me with great problems, but I always surprise them. I always say, before we get to your problem, how do you see death? How do you see life? Because it's going to someday be terminated in you. Most people who's filled with problems have not left at the end of life. And if you don't look at it, this thing will drive you crazy. Because you can't control thought. Thought can only be controlled when you have looked at the fact that you are terminal. There is going to be a time when you are not going to be here. And when you see that, that's when you should focus on the word gift. Life is nothing more than a gift. And the gift is the body, gift is the natural world, and the gift is other people. And it's in other people that we find happiness. So now we turn to our parable of the day. It is involved with a king and a son. And the king is going to have a marriage of the son. And so he sends out invitations to people that he would like to come to the wedding. Now, to appreciate this passage that I'm going to read to you, way back 2,000 years ago, there was a tradition in Judaism that you have banquets. And banquets is always when you want to celebrate something. So you send out the invitations, and the people that receive them are all supposed to refuse to come. And therefore, you send to the king, in this case, a reason why you're not coming. Now, then the king will send a second invitation to who he wants. But if you receive the second invitation, you cannot give an excuse. You have to go. If you don't send a response, you could have your life terminated. Now, it's a very interesting concept to first send an invitation, then see what a person gives you as a response for not coming, then using that to decide who's going to be permanently on the list. And if you receive that, you understand you're on the list, but you better go, or the consequences could be severe. Now that idea is very foreign to us. When we go to banquets, and I remember my first banquet was for a Little League ending season, and we all got some rewards. It was a nice occasion, it was a good occasion, and I wouldn't have wanted to miss it. In this case, when you get that second invitation, you have to be there, or the consequences are severe. So this is the parable, and it speaks a truth to our lives. The truth is, in Jean's case, going and meeting the Queen. It's in terms of my nephew seeing a new image in the mirror. It's in the life of Paul Harvey because of his father learning something about the needs of human beings. And it is in the idea of the gift. And Jesus answered and spoke to them again by parable and said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for a son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding. And they were not willing to come." Again, they all had to say they were not willing to come. That was a given. And then the second verse, or the fourth. Again, he sent out servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. And again, he sent out other servants, saying, "Tell those who are invited, see, I prepared my dinner, my oxen and fattened cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding." But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed some of them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up those days. Then he said to his servants, "The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding." So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who did not have on a wedding garment. So he said to him, "Friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, "Bind his hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." There was one man who went, and he wasn't dressed appropriately. You don't go to the queen unless you're dressed appropriately. This man seemed to lack that knowledge. For if you are going, you go in a white robe. But basically everybody used to wear a white robe at Jesus' time. He wore one. But it had to be cleaned. It had to be perfect because you were coming to the king. Now, obviously, the passage has a relationship to today. There are many people who are too busy to recognize there is a God of the universe. They think their lives are important. I'm always interested in people who think their whole life and they've got it organized in the way they do. It's so important. It's very important until you have the problems of the body. And then things that were really important seem to lose their importance. If we wander away from the fact that the gift from God is an invitation to come into his presence and feel his love and share it with others, we will get lost in life. And people out there, I can tell you, are lost in life. My daughter and Heather stood here last week and told you that kids in school are in trouble mentally because they are coming from homes that don't recognize the King. They don't recognize the Son. And as I look forward to a new year, I'm excited about it. because I know that I will find love. And I love to see love. I love to see the baby, the child. And this Christmas we had the fortune of having 2 families bring young children. And I watched my grandson and granddaughter get on the floor with these children. And then they took these children to the piano and said, each of you sit at the piano and play and sing. They were terrible. But this one boy, 10 years old, he's hitting that piano and he's singing away. And every other adults were a little, didn't necessarily see why he should be doing this. But he didn't want to stop. For the first time, he found his voice and he found his singing. And Jeff found his way in with his verse today. Jeff was singing out in the driveway. I said, well, now we have a leader of a choir. He said, I've heard that before. What I've read to you is a powerful parable. It tells us who we are and what the King expects us to be. I hope you enjoy the new year. I'm looking forward to it. Amen. Yeah, let's sing that.